As we were all kind of wondering when the Chicago Bears would start making movement on hiring their next defensive coordinator, we now have word that the Chicago Bears have interviewed Chris Harris for their defensive coordinator position. We're going to talk about all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, quick update episode as the Bears have now interviewed their first candidate for their defensive coordinator position in interviewing the Titans' current cornerback and defensive passing game coach in Chris Harris. Now, this is a guy who is a former NFL player. And, you know, he's played before. He actually was drafted by the Chicago Bears in the 6th round of the 2025 draft. And he became a starting safety for the Chicago Bears on top of that. So, you know, when it comes down to it, he was also on the team that helped the Bears get to the Super Bowl. So this is a guy that is familiar with the system, familiar with the city, I should say, familiar with the franchise. And maybe that's why he's the first interviewee by the Chicago Bears. Now, he was traded to the Carolina Panthers in 2000. He traded to the Panthers in 2010 and 11. So, you know, listen, that's what it comes down to. He's been on coaching staffs from Mark Trestman. He also was the Los Angeles Chargers assistant defensive back coach from 2016 to 2019, and he was on the Washington Commanders staff as well as their defensive back coach from 2020 to 2022. So he actually interviewed for a position on the Chicago Bears staff last year before deciding to join the Titans. So with coaching the Titans defensive backs, the Titans passing defense wasn't really anything great, right? It was right around the middle of the road. They were 18th in passing yards allowed per game at 227, but they had the fewest interceptions and the fewest pass breakups in the league last year. So those are kind of negatives pointing towards that as well. He has been considered a rising coach in the NFL over the last few years. And while they still look for Matt Eberflus to keep on play calling responsibilities, maybe the Bears are going to go kind of more of an unproven talent there, somebody who can come in, maybe learn under Matt Eberflus to eventually take over those duties. So he would be somebody who would have to develop in the role, right? That's the first thing. Now, when you look at the Chicago Bears and the young secondary that we've been building over the last few years, maybe that's why they're looking at bringing that guy in. So, you know, we'll end up seeing what happens with that. But listen, the Bears are at least now starting to make movement. This is the first at least public candidate for the defensive coordinator position. And I don't think this is the route that I kind of expected the Chicago Bears to go. I know Matt Eberflus is no longer a rookie head coach. He's moving into his 3rd season as a head coach. But I kind of expected the Chicago Bears to go with a more veteran option with the defensive coordinator there. Now, this isn't a hiring by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't want to act like they've hired this guy already. But it's just not, at least with the first interview, where I expected the Bears to go. Now, they're probably going to have a lot of interviews with this. We've already up to, 8 or 9 interviews on the offensive coordinator position. I don't know if they get that deep on defensive coordinator, but I do think that they're going to interview probably at least 5 to 6 candidates. I would say with that, maybe even a little less than that. But when it comes down to it, the Bears are now starting to make movement on that. What does that mean for their offensive coordinator? Maybe they feel like there's a solid place with that. I would expect a 2nd round of interviews for the Chicago Bears with the offensive coordinator. But at least right now we know kind of where the Bears are going with that defensive coordinator. They're interviewing somebody who's young, still needs to develop. Not necessarily that veteran presence that we thought would have kind of better situational awareness, kind of shore up some of the things that Matt Eberflus lacks on a little bit, even as just an experienced head coach. So at least with this first interview, it would kind of point towards Matt Eberflus still being heavily involved, in that just defensive side of the ball, which may mean that's why they're going more veteran on the offense. Personally, I like my head coaches to kind of have their hands in a little bit of everything, but if that's Matt Eberflus' strength, that's Matt Eberflus' strength, and that may point to where Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, and Matt Eberflus want to go with this defensive coordinator position. Again, this is just the first interview. As we get more candidates to come out, of course, that'll paint that picture in a little bit more of a full light. Kind of right now, it's just reading the tea leaves of this one interview, and we'll see what happens with the Chicago Bears. But like I said, guy's been a defensive back head coach. He's a defensive back himself. He was on the Super Bowl, not that won to the Super Bowl. He was on a team that went to the Super Bowl. So he at least brings that experience of being a player that can relate to the secondary that we're trying to grow, trying to develop. And, you know, that this young core of the secondary that we have of Jalen Johnson being there, hopefully he's retained, Jaquan Brisker, right? Kyler Gordon, Travis Lewis, and then you also got Tyreek Stevenson, Terrell Lewis, Tyreek Stevenson. So as you have those guys who are trying to develop, maybe you do want kind of a guy who can relate to those cornerbacks and can help develop that, whereas Matt Eberflus overlooks the defense as a whole. But like I said, let me know what you guys think on everything down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bears Central on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end everything on, Chi-Town up, Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.